If you're like me, you're probably one of those people that people struggle to buy gifts for. Not only that, but we're nearing the end of the year, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to review some of the tools, namely books, that have been released around the subject of Biblical Greek over around the last 12 months. So if you're interested in the original languages at all, or you're buying for someone who's interested in the original languages, then this is a video for you. Hi, I'm Daryl Burling from Master New Testament Greek, and I help people with the tools, habits, and system to master the Greek of the New Testament. Now, if you haven't already done so, go ahead and subscribe to this channel and then hit the notify bell to be notified when new videos come out. So like I said at the beginning, this video serves two purposes. On the one hand, it's hard to buy gifts for people who are into nerdy kind of subjects like Greek. And so, on the other hand, there's been a bunch of books that have been released over the last 12 months or thereabouts that I thought would be worth highlighting. And so what I've done is in this video, we're going to break them up, and I'm going to break up the audience really into different groups. So people who have had no Greek experience but maybe are interested, people who have had a little bit of Greek, maybe they're going through beginning Greek or would like to go through beginning Greek, people who have gone through beginning Greek but want a little bit more. Maybe you're already finished with even intermediate Greek, and so what are some resources that might be helpful for you? And then last of all, I actually have a couple of books for people who teach Greek that I would recommend as well. So let's get underway. Now, the first group that I want to talk about is really, I got a couple of books that I've been looking at that I think are interesting for people who have had no experience with Greek whatsoever. So if you've never touched biblical Greek and you're interested, but maybe you're just wanting to dabble, well, this might be a good place to start. The first of these is Understanding Bible Translations by my friend Dr. Bill Barrack, and we had a video with him just a few weeks ago, and you can find the link to that up above here. Now, this book is a fantastic book. In this book, what he does, he's not talking about English Bible translations. His focus in this book is really to focus on the challenge of the translator. Now, this makes this an interesting book because not only is it suitable for people who've got no background in Greek, but it's also really helpful for people who've got a lot of background in Greek. So if you've been looking at Greek and maybe doing some translation and you're interested in maybe translation into English or another language, maybe you're doing missionary work, then this book is a must read. It's not overly long. It's very easy reading. He's a good writer, and so you'll enjoy this book. So that's Understanding Bible Translations, bringing God's Word into new context. And that's really the background. And Dr. Barrack has 16 years as a Bible translator in Bangladesh, and so he knows what he's talking about. He's also taught in seminaries and so on as well. So excellent book, well worth it. So if you're interested in a little bit more about how Bible translations come together, some of the flaws in them, some of the challenges of writing a translation, this is a great book. Right, next one. This next one is more for people who are interested in biblical Greek but don't really feel they can commit to the whole language. They don't know if they want to go all the way with the whole journey to full fluency, which is what Master New Testament Greek is about. Now, this book may be a good bridge, okay? So this is Biblical Greek Made Simple by Zacharias. This was released earlier this year, and this is really designed as a beginner textbook for a seminary, designed so that over that one semester, just one semester of Greek, you will learn the basics of the language, but not so that you can read it, but so that you can use Bible software with it. And so this is very much a Greek grammar, but for people who really aren't going to use go into a lot of depth with every element of the grammar. Now, each chapter in here has explanations, diagrams, there are, the different charts and so on that you're going to find in a regular grammar. But then at the end of each chapter, what he does is he gives you, here's the least you need to know. Okay, so he's really trying to focus on a minimalist approach, and he helps you to understand the things you do need to know. And then he gives you some exercises, of course, but then he's very clear about the least you need to know. So if you're not quite sure if you want to go all the way in Biblical Greek, but you want to dabble a little bit, this book might be helpful. Biblical Greek Made Simple, published by Lexham Press by Zacharias. So have a look at that one. The next one that I want to bring to your attention is actually a republication of a previous book. Now, this previous book was, we've talked about this before. In fact, this is Mounce's Basics of Biblical Greek. Now, this is the 4th edition of his grammar. The 3rd edition, the version prior to this, came out in 2009. A lot has taken place in the intervening years in the world of Greek scholarship. And so I actually did a video on this, a couple of videos on this, which I'll link to one of them above, and you should see the other one from that as well. But this is the 4th edition, and the key changes in here really... He has a little more nuance around Actionsart and around verbal aspect, and then there's a significant change around the middle voice. He's updated his treatment of the middle voice, but the biggest change in here really is it's no longer kind of has that, that book for children kind of approach. Now it seems like an actual adult's textbook. You don't have the guy in the used to have the little guy in here who used to try and keep you going with little bits of information and try and keep things interesting. He's gone, and now you've got just the grammar. Okay, it makes it a little duller, but the content is much the same. There are a few refinements in the workbook as well, very small, but for the most part this is a solid upgrade. So if you don't have this edition and you are interested, particularly around the middle voice, this is a worthwhile book. Now, if you're interested in beginning Greek, this is still a very good book for beginning Greek, and I recommend this as well. But I also want to recommend to you, this one is not a book that was published this year, but this is a book that I have been looking at just recently, and so far I like it. Time will tell, I've got a little bit more work to do in it, but nonetheless, this is Reading Biblical Greek by Gibson and Campbell. Now, this is a much smaller book, and it's a strange shaped book, and the reason for this is because it takes a very different approach to grammar. Now, when it comes to Mounce and Black and pretty much every other Greek grammar on the market, they all use the grammar translate method. In other words, they teach you the grammar, then you're going to do the translation related to that grammar. This approach is different. This is the present, practice, produce approach, and so they don't state it as such, but it has a slightly different methodology or pedagogy that comes with it. And so you can see here that each lesson is simply one page, and each page is split into 3 columns, and each of these 3 columns indicates the lesson you want to learn, gives you some detail around what that looks like, and then it gives you some examples, and at the bottom normally you get your exercises. So the exercises aren't on every page, but again, it does still follow the grammar translate method, but it has a different approach to the grammar translate method. So far, I've been looking at this, and this is a really interesting grammar, and I am going to be spending a little bit more time with this in the new year. At least I'm looking forward to that. So watch this space. But that's the second one I recommend for people who are looking at beginning Greek. Maybe you're looking at either going into it and you want a good grammar. This would be a good one. There's a workbook that goes with it as well. So that's that one. Okay, so what about if you're intermediate Greek? What if you've passed beginning Greek and you just want something to keep you going? Then what? Well, I've got a couple of options for you here. One of them, again, this one's not new, but this is a good one. Greek for Life by Benjamin Merkle and Robert Plummer. This book is designed really to motivate you to continue to study the language for yourself. Even though you've finished seminary, even though you don't have everybody looking over your soul shoulder or offering you grades for learning Greek, this is a book that should and is intended to motivate you to keep going. It's pretty short. It's about 140 pages, something around there. And so it's a pretty quick read. It's very easy to read. It's nicely laid out. This is a good book. So, in fact, this is probably for somebody who is, if you're looking to give this to somebody and they don't already have it on their shelf, this would probably be the pick of books in this video that I would recommend that you give away. This is the most giveable of all the books, shall we say. The other one that I want to encourage you, by the same author, Benjamin Merkle, earlier this year also released another book, and I don't have a physical copy of this one. I have read it. It is very good. It's called Exegetical Gems in Biblical Greek, and this book is a great reintroduction to the language. So if you've been out of Greek for a little while, or maybe if you've been in the Greek for a bit, maybe you've been doing exegesis, exposition, but you've not actually looked at the grammar, this would be a nice way to sort of reintroduce yourself to the grammar. And he goes through a number of examples and explains the example, asks a question about it, provides a challenge, and then provides a grammatical concept that answers that particular question. So this is a fantastic book if you just want to reacquaint yourself with some Greek and you've been out for a little while. So again, I'll leave a link to that below, and you'll see this is what it looks like right here. Another one that if you're in intermediate Greek that was released this year that is a really important work, I think, and I've only got one copy of, or one one volume of it here is the Septuaginta. Now, this is the Greek Old Testament with the Apocrypha in Greek. And what it does is they give you in this has been worked on for years. This is a great resource. So you get the Greek text laid out nicely, depending on the kind of genre and so on, which it all looks like. There we go, Jeremiah. And at the bottom of the page here, you get the words that occur less than, I think it's 30 times in the Greek New Testament. So if you know the words that occur more than 30 times in the Greek New Testament, then this is a great way to dip your feet into something a little more difficult. Now, I say a little more difficult only because I realize that for most of us, we tend to have a much better knowledge of the New Testament than we do of the Old. And so this is a great book to read, to go through in order to just give yourself a bit of a challenge with your Greek, but also not so much that it's going to be insurmountable. The hardest thing about this is going to be some of those books with the grammar, but if you've already done beginning Greek, if you've already done intermediate Greek, then this is a great next step to learn how to continue to grow your knowledge of not only the New Testament, not only Greek, but even of the Old Testament as well. So this is the translation of the Old Testament into Greek, produced around 200-ish BC, and then now it's bound and updated with convenience, words for convenience at the bottom of the page. So this is expensive. This would be the sort of gift that I can imagine somebody giving to their spouse a year or so after marriage, perhaps. I don't know. But anyway, this is a great gift. It is expensive, but it's worthwhile, and it will certainly provide some plenty of ground for expanding your Greek into areas that you're unfamiliar with, but yet are relevant to what you're studying. So that's that book. That's the Septuaginta, 2 volumes. You can get those at the link below. Another option I want to put before you, if you're at that intermediate Greek stage and you realize that vocabulary is a little rusty, maybe as I was going through the Septuaginta there, you were like, my vocabulary is not that good. Well, let me encourage you to consider the Master New Testament Greek Student Edition. Now, the Student Edition of Master New Testament Greek comes with 2 core things. First of all, you get electronic vocabulary for every word of the Greek New Testament. And it's not only just given to you in electronic form, but it's ordered from the easy books through to the hard. So the design of this is that as you go through and learn the vocabulary, you'll then be able to read chapter by chapter through the text of the New Testament, starting with the easiest books and going all the way through to the hardest books. Now, in addition to that, it also comes with a PDF. And that PDF will walk you step by step through how to use your mobile device, your phone or your iPad or whatever it is, to import the vocabulary that I give you in there and then use it on your mobile device so that you can learn it and master it. So that's the Master New Testament Greek Student Edition. I encourage you to consider that as well, and I'll put a link to that down below as well. Finally, for people who are past the intermediate Greek stage, maybe you are teaching Greek, maybe you are well into the advanced Greek and you may be a doctoral student, something like that. Well, I have a couple of options for you as well. The first one is this book here, Greek Pedagogy in Crisis. Now, this book it's a dissertation that's been repackaged, but this book I found really, really interesting. In this book, the author analyzes the different approaches to biblical Greek, learning biblical Greek, examines why is it that biblical Greek is so hard, and then makes some suggestions about how to actually change the approach. And that's one of the reasons why I put Constantine Campbell's and Richard Gibson's grammar in front of you in this video, out of the recommendation of this book. Having looked at this book, having then gone to that grammar, that was really helpful for me. So I encourage you, if you're teaching biblical Greek, that book is well worth a read. I want to encourage you to go get that. So that's Greek Pedagogy in Crisis, a pedagogical analysis and assessment of New Testament Greek in 21st century theological education. And that is a dissertation title if ever I heard one. That's the first one. And the other one I want to encourage you with, if you're teaching Greek, is this one. That's not so much teaching Greek. If you're teaching and you're talking about Greek and exegesis and those kind of things, then I also want to encourage you with this one as well. So this is from Hermeneutics to Exegesis. It actually came out at the end of last year. The Trajectory of Biblical Interpretation. This is a pretty heavy book, even though it's quite light. It's heavy reading at places. It assumes a fair degree of background in people like Gadamer and some of the historical, 20th century and previous people who wrote on hermeneutics. And on top of that, it's going to require a pretty thorough knowledge of the hermeneutics landscape. So this is not for the faint-hearted, but this is a helpful book to help you just sort of put a number of those things together. So if you've looked at a number of hermeneutical approaches, maybe you've read, say, Kostenberger and Patterson and Duval and Hall, and maybe a few others like that together. And one of the things I liked and appreciated about this book was the fact that he had provided a good analysis of these different approaches to hermeneutics, and then provided some of his own analysis and thoughts on it. And I thought that was quite helpful. Now, this is only 167 pages. It's not long, so if you do teach biblical Greek, or if you do teach hermeneutics and exegesis, then this book is well worth a look through. It shouldn't take you too long. So, Matthew Malcolm, Hermeneutics to Exegesis, I encourage you to consider that one as well. So that's it. So here's what I want to ask you today. If you've been watching this video, if you've been looking at these books, which one of these books are you most interested in, and why? Leave a comment in the comment section below, and I look forward to interacting with you there. And if this has been helpful, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and keep taking small steps, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. We'll see you then. Bye.